Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We are so glad you are joining us today. We have a topic that confuses learners at every level, beginner, intermediate, and even advanced. And the reason it causes so much confusion is that most people have heard a rule about these two words, but the rule is not the complete picture. Today, we are going to give you the full story.
That's right. Today we're talking about among and between. Both words describe a relationship involving position or connection in relation to other things or people, but they are used in different situations, and the classic rule most people learn is only half the truth. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly when to use each one and why.
We are going to cover what each word means, the classic rule, why the classic rule is incomplete, the real and fuller rule, how to use them in sentences, where they appear in everyday life, expressions and phrases, common mistakes, two conversations, and a quiz. Let's get started.
Let's start with the classic rule, because this is what most learners are taught, and it's a useful starting point, even though it is not complete. The classic rule is this: use between when talking about two things, use among when talking about three or more things. That's the rule most textbooks give you, between the two chairs, among the many options.
And this rule works fine in many situations. The house is situated between the river and the forest. She had to choose between two job offers. Both of those use between with two things, and they're correct. The letter was hidden among the old books. She is well liked among her colleagues. Both of those use among with a group of more than two things, and they are also correct.
But here's where the classic rule breaks down. You can actually use between with three or more things in many situations, and it sounds completely natural and correct. The agreement was signed between three countries. The prize money was divided between the 5 winners. She had to decide between 4 different options. All of these use between with more than two things, and they're all perfectly correct English.
So why does between work with 3 or more things in those sentences? This is where the real rule comes in. Between is used when the things are seen as distinct and separate individuals. When you can identify each item clearly and the relationship involves those individual items separately, you use between. Among is used when the things form a group or a mass where the items blend together and are not individually identified.
Think about it this way. Between is about distinct, countable, separately identified things, whether there are 2 or more of them. Among is about a group, a mass, or a collection, where the items blend together and are not individually identified.
Let's show this with a clear contrast. She divided the money between her 3 children means the money was split among 3 specific identified individuals, the children. She disappeared among the crowd means she became part of a large, undifferentiated group. You cannot separately identify each person in the crowd. The crowd is a mass. That's why among is used with crowd.
Another contrast. The project was shared between 4 team members, means 4 specific identified individuals each took a part. There was confusion among the team, means the team as a whole group experienced confusion. Team here is a collective group, not 4 separately identified individuals.
Here's a helpful way to think about it. If you can replace among with in the middle of a group of, or surrounded by, then among is the right word. She was sitting among her friends. She was sitting in the middle of a group of her friends. That replacement works, but you wouldn't say the money was divided in the middle of a group of her 3 children. That doesn't work. So between is right there.
Now, let's look at the kinds of nouns that typically go with each word. Among almost always follows a plural noun or a collective noun that represents a group. Among students, among colleagues, among friends, among the trees, among the papers, among the crowd. The noun after among usually represents a group or collection where the individual items are not individually identified.
Between is followed by individual items that are clearly identified. Between you and me, between the 2 buildings, between Monday and Friday, between the 3 options, between 6 countries, between the sofa and the wall. Each item after between is clearly separated and individually identified.
Between also commonly appears with the conjunction and when two items are listed, between Monday and Friday, between you and me, between the kitchen and the living room. This and structure is very typical of between. You wouldn't say among Monday and Friday. The and structure belongs to between.
Now let's talk about some very common and fixed expressions that use between and among, because knowing these phrases will help you sound natural in everyday conversation.
Let's look at some fixed expressions. With between. Between you and me means in confidence, just between us. Between you and me, I don't think the plan will work. Read between the lines means to find a hidden meaning. In between means in the middle space or period. Between a rock and a hard place means every option is difficult.
With among other things means as one of several things. She is a painter, a musician, and, among other things, a published author. Among themselves means within the group without involving outsiders. Among friends means in a comfortable, safe setting. Among the best means forming part of the top group. She is considered among the best teachers in the school.
One quick note. You may have heard the word amongst. It means exactly the same as among. Amongst is simply a slightly older or more formal variant. In modern everyday English, among is the more natural and common choice. Use among and you will always be correct.
Now let's go through the mistakes, because this is where learners make the most progress.
Mistake number 1, rigidly applying the two things versus three or more rule and getting it wrong. A learner might say, the prize was shared among the two brothers instead of between the two brothers. They use among because they've heard among is for groups, but two is clearly not a group. The correct sentence is, the prize was shared between the two brothers. When you have exactly two clearly identified individuals, between is always used.
Mistake number 2, never using between with more than two things because of the oversimplified rule. A learner might say the meeting was among the three managers when the three managers are clearly identified individuals in a specific interaction. The correct sentence is, the meeting was between the three managers. Between is fine with three or more when the items are individually distinct. Mistake number 3. Using between with a mass noun or a collective group. A learner might say, he walked between the crowd, or the news spread between the students. Walking through a crowd means being surrounded by an undifferentiated mass of people, so among is needed. He walked among the crowd. For the news spreading through a group, use among. The news spread among the students.
Mistake number 4. Using among with the and structure. A learner might say, she had to choose among the city and the countryside. The and structure with two or more identified options belongs to between. She had to choose between the city and the countryside.
Mistake number 5. Forgetting that between is used for comparison and difference. When talking about the difference or relationship between two or more specific things, between is always the right word. The difference between the two methods, the relationship between nutrition and health, the connection between the three factors. Do not use among for comparison structures.
Mistake number 6. Mixing up between you and me and among you and me. Between you and me is a fixed expression meaning in confidence, just between us. You cannot say among you and me. It is always between you and me. This is one of those fixed phrases where only one word works.
6 mistakes and 6 clear corrections. These are the exact patterns that will sharpen your use of between and among significantly.
Now let us hear 2 conversations so you can see between and among working naturally.
First conversation. 2 friends talking about a group decision.
Have you heard that the team is going to pick someone to represent us at the conference?
Yes, I think the choice is between Sarah, Marcus, and Yusuf. They're all strong candidates.
There's a lot of debate among the rest of us about who would do the best job.
I know. Between you and me, I think Sarah is the most prepared, but I'm not sure the others agree.
It's hard because there are genuine differences between each of them in terms of communication style.
Exactly. And there's some tension among the senior staff about whether to prioritize experience or energy.
Well, whatever decision is made among the leadership team, I hope it is made quickly. We need time to prepare.
Did you notice? Between Sarah, Marcus, and Yusuf, because these are three distinct identified individuals being compared. Among the rest of us, because this is an undifferentiated group. Between you and me has a fixed expression. Differences between each of them because the comparison involves individually identified people. Among the senior staff because the staff forms a collective group.
Second conversation. A teacher and a student discussing a reading passage.
I wanted to ask about this paragraph. It says the agreement was reached between several nations, but I thought between was only for two things.
That's a common misconception. Between works perfectly with several nations here because each nation is a separate, distinct, clearly identified participant in the agreement. The nations are not a vague group. They're specific, individual countries making a specific deal.
So when would I use among for countries?
You would say something like, there is widespread support among nations in the region. Here, nations is a vague collective group, not a set of individually identified countries. You cannot list them separately. They're a general group.
I see. So it really is about whether the items are individually distinct or part of a general group.
Exactly. That's the real rule behind between and among.
Quiz time. 5 sentences, correct or incorrect. Take a moment before we give each answer.
Sentence 1. The secret was kept between the whole group of 50 people.
Take a moment. This is not natural. 50 people is a large, undifferentiated mass, and the idea is that the secret stayed within the group. Among is the right word here. The secret was kept among the group.
Sentence 2. She had to choose between 4 job offers.
This is correct. 4 distinct, individually identified options are being compared. Between works perfectly here, even though there are more than 2 items.
Sentence 3. There's a growing sense of trust between the local community.
This is not quite right. A local community is a collective group, not a set of individually identified people. Among is more natural here. There's a growing sense of trust among the local community.
Between you and me, I don't think this is a good idea.
This is correct. Between you and me is a fixed expression, meaning in confidence. It's always between, never among. Sentence 5. The argument started among the 2 brothers at dinner. This is incorrect. 2 is always between. The argument started between the 2 brothers at dinner.
How did you do? If you got all 5 right, you really have understood the full picture. If you missed any, go back to the real rule. Between is for distinct, individually identified items, whether 2 or more. Among is for a group or mass where items are not individually identified.
Just to finish with a clear summary, between is used when the things involved are separately and individually identified. It works with 2 things and with more than 2 things when each one is distinct. Between 2 chairs, between the 3 candidates, between 5 countries. The and structure belongs to between.
Among is used when the things form a group, a mass, or collective where items are not separately identified. Among friends, among the crowd, among colleagues, among the papers. It's about being part of or within a group.
The simple test. Can you list the items separately and see each one as an individual participant? If yes, use between. Are the items a general group or mass where individual members are not distinguished? If yes, use among.
And remember that between is fine with 3 or more things when those things are individually distinct. Don't let the old 2 things only rule hold you back from using between correctly.
And that's everything for today. We really hope this episode gave you complete clarity and genuine confidence with between and among. These words appear in every kind of conversation and writing, and getting them right makes your English noticeably more precise.
Your practice task. Write 4 sentences, one using between with exactly 2 things, one using between with 3 or more clearly identified individuals, one using among with a group or collective noun, and one using a fixed expression with either between or among. That covers every important use from today.
Leave your questions in the comments. We love hearing from our listeners every week.
Share this episode with a friend who's learning English. Every share truly helps us reach more learners.
Take care of yourself, keep practicing, and remember that understanding the reason behind a rule is always more powerful than just memorizing the rule itself.
We'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, and keep going. You're doing so well.